Okay guys, so this is a pretty simple protein skimmer. You can see by my foot there for scale, this one's not that big. Now the top of it is pretty simple. So 90mm PVC. This was a Coke bottle. So basically you've just pushed it down and then get a heat gun or a hot hairdryer, and basically the Coke bottle will actually shrink right onto it, and it shrinks so tight that the water will literally try and wick down, but it'll stop. You won't get any water coming past. Now, that height of this doesn't really matter so much. It wants to be nice and deep. Basically, you can tune these things once they're built, so don't be too sort of preoccupied with the size. So this one here is about I don't know, maybe 2.5 feet deep, sort of thing. Now you'll see at the top, it's a nasty cheap plastic container that had nuts or something in it, and inside you can see that's just the lid of another sort of Coke bottle or similar with the top cut out of it. So I've just used the body of the nut to hold this down, and it's just a bit of silicone or a rubber seal underneath. All you need is somewhere for the bubbles to come up and go into this cup, and it literally, when you get enough rubbish in the foam will then eject it into this cup, and then it will condense back into water and run down this pipe into a cup or similar, so it can leave the protein skimmer. So basically, once the bubbles concentrate the rubbish at the top, it gets ejected into the cup, and then it leaves your pond, so your algae can't feed on it. Now, whatever cup you use at the top, it doesn't matter, but you need to drill a heap of holes in it. So basically, if you're pumping a heap of air into here, that air has to get out the top, so you have to have these in the top. So right, so here you'll notice this pipe going down here. This is where the water goes in. This is nothing crucial. It just, as long as it's not going in at the top, it has to be about 20% of the length. Because what happens is, if it goes in too close to the top, the turbulence disrupts the froth. So the rubbish that's sitting up here in the froth basically gets diluted and put back into the water. So you want about 20% from the top. So just go in, and you don't want any sort of square shoulder inside, because the rising bubbles will get caught on it and it'll make a big bubble, and then that big bubble so often will rise up and disrupt the foam at the top. Now the outlet, all the outlet is another pipe glued in the bottom. There's nothing special going on, just as short as you can make it. But one thing that can't change though, you need a valve, and the valve can be here, the valve can be here, it doesn't matter. But this here, I don't glue this top fitting. So, and the reason I don't glue it is because once you get it running, you might have it running on one pump, but if you upgrade the pump and put a bigger pump in, then you have to make this one lower, because basically the water will sit here somewhere, and basically you want it to sit about this shoulder here when it's, the froth coming up, and then you want to adjust this valve so basically it limits the water coming out, and then you can actually make the froth go up a little higher and really tune the spot where it sits. So basically you need this one to be lower so that you can do the tuning. If you have this too close to this level here, basically the water will just flow out the top into that cup, and there's nothing you can do about it. So this one here, it's just an outlet. Now you'll notice there's a T-piece here. The reason for the T-piece is because when you first start it, the water will go higher, and then it'll settle back down as it starts to flow out this pipe. So what you need to do is have this one here to break the siphon. Once the water starts flowing back to your pond, you don't want this to siphon and pull this head of water back down. So you need this open. Now, sometimes they make a googling sound, so I just get a piece of Dacron and jam it in the end so it can draw air, but it's not making a nuisance noise. Now keep in mind, this is a small one, but it will still do a 1,000-gallon pond, like totally crystal clear. So yeah, it also needs to have bigger piping than you would assume, because if you've got too much restriction on the pipe going back to your pond, it will force the water level in here to be higher than what you require. So yeah, generally speaking, go much bigger on the piping, like maybe 1.5 or 2-inch piping or something like that, especially from here onwards, so that this level that's happening in here is pretty delicate, so it doesn't take much on this valve to adjust it. And it is very specific as well. You want the froth to sit sort of just below the bottom of that cone. So, and this is the same for my big one too, which I'll go and I'll cover now. Oh, by the way, this one's only got one air stone in it, just one. So again, 4mm or 532 flexible poly, and it's got one 50mm air stone, 50mm golf ball style one in the bottom. Now, I ran this for a couple of months with a normal air stone. It wasn't anything special, but it certainly cleared my pond up. And once I built my big one, that's when I put the white silica glass ones in. All right, so the big one. Yeah. All right, some extra light. Okay, so you can see there the rubbish coming out of there. All right, the same, it's got the pipe off to one side to break the vacuum. This pipe here sets the water level. You can see the water's a little bit higher than the pipe, and that's why you adjust this valve to set it. You'll see I've got 4 air lines going in. They go around the back and they sneak in. Now the height of this one, if I back up a bit, you can see. So this one's about probably 7 feet tall, I guess, so 1.7 meters. And you'll see the size of the piping. It's fairly big piping to make sure that it doesn't upset the flow here. Now, worth a mention, when you got this sort of setup, you can't put the ozone into your filter. The ozone has to happen after you've filtered your water. So in my case, the water comes up into there and it gets filtered inside that top tank. You can see inside there's Dacron. Then after that it goes out this tube into the next one, which is my bio balls. You can see there. So that's filtering about 5,500 litres an hour. Then after that it comes out. So this would go back to my pond or the waterfall, and you'll see I steal water off the bottom and out the bottom, and then it goes down to, hang on, sorry with the light, and it goes down to that pump, and then that pump lifts it back up into the skimmer, which it goes in right there. Now the reason for that is, the ozone then, ozonated water then comes out and goes through that pipe, and you'll see it goes, and then it goes back into the pipe on its way to the waterfall. You can't have your ozonated water going through your filter because it'll kill the biological bacteria that you need. So again, you can see here the filth that comes out of it. It's pretty good. Sorry, it's going dark here. Now, ozone. Okay, so I have this was an 80mm ozone generator. 80 milligram. This one did my pond pretty well, but not in humid conditions. If it's humid, you lose about half of your generation. So I've got a second one here, which is 200 milligram. So the pair of these, they do it pretty well. You'll see it's a fairly big pump. So this one, I think it's the Resun 20. Now, basically, you'll see I've got clear pipe going into the ozone generators, but I've got poly, the black poly coming out. And basically, I've only got 2 of the air stones are running ozone, and the other 2 are just air. And basically, I have you don't need this, but I've got an ORP controller basically, and what it's doing, it's looking at pH, and it also turns these 2 ozone generators on and off. So when my ORP measurement gets to 400, basically it turns the ozone off, and then the protein skimmer is just air. So basically the air goes through these 2 ozone generators and becomes ozone, but once the ORP or the water clarity is perfect, then these turn off and it just goes through and it stays as air. It doesn't get turned into ozone. So, but basically, if you aren't going to put an ORP controller on there, if you go above an ORP measurement of 400, it's not ideal for fish. I mean, about 450 is where you would go. About 450 is where you'd go if you want to heal fish or you've got sick fish. But for the most part, 400 is absolutely perfect. Now, if you don't have an ORP controller and you run a huge ozone generator, there is a chance you'll overcook the pond, which isn't ideal, because if the water is too perfect, it's not good for them. So basically, if you aren't going to put an ORP controller, these are about $190, $200. If you're not going to put one of these in, you're probably better off just to dial things back a bit on how much ozone you run. Generally speaking, about 1 milligram of ozone per 2.57 gallons of water is a pretty good number. So, you know, for example, if you had a fairly big pond, you could run 500 milligrams or 200 milligrams, just sort of do the maths on that, and you won't overcook the pond. So we had ours run for I think about a month with no ORP controller, and we were really concerned about it. Then we put the ORP controller in there and measured it, and we weren't even coming close to the danger zone. So, you know, it's well worth doing. It's, like I say, it's a bit daunting for some people, but the water quality is you know, it's the best you can get. So, because you're not trying to filter it out, you're physically consuming the waste. So, but anyway, I hope that helps someone out. Thanks.